Welcome to Tonight in America. I'm your host, Don Terrence Jones. We have an exciting show tonight for everyone. So I'm recording this video ahead of time. I'm going to drop it later on tonight on Monday, 27, October the 27th. We're reacting to We Should Give Hamas Nukes. Jackson Hinkle clashes with Shabbos Kestenbaum on Israel and Hamas. Now, I would jump in and provide a little commentary here or there, but for the most part, I'll let the guys get off their points and let them have their conversation. So, I'll remind everyone to smash the like button, leave a comment. Like I said before, I won't be doing live streams for the time being until I get another internet provider for my PC. Because right now, currently speaking, my PC, my internet is fucked right now. But the show goes on, so I will be dropping pre-recorded shows now going forth. I will not edit it at all. Maybe a couple of edits, and maybe I might edit the intro, but I'm not gonna edit the entire show. I'm gonna drop it the way it will. It should come out as if it was live, pretty much. So let's jump on into the debate because I am pressed for time right now.
Hello and welcome to Counterpoints. I'm Michal Prendergast, and coming up tonight, a tentative ceasefire now in place in Gaza. All eyes are on Hamas. Will its future role involve disarmament? Then we'll take a look at the future of Gaza and the post-war roles for Tony Blair and President Trump. And lastly, we turn to Washington, where AIPAC is facing growing pushback as US politicians distance themselves from the pro-Israel lobby. Joining us for this debate is Jackson Hinkle, a political commentator and host of Legitimate Targets on YouTube, and Shabbos Kestenbaum, a political commentator for PragerU. Gentlemen, welcome to Counterpoints. US Vice President J.D. Vance has urged Hamas to disarm during his visit to Israel. I'd like to start with you, Shabbos. Does Hamas need to disarm for this ceasefire to move forward?
Well, obviously, one of the preconditions of the ceasefire is Hamas disarming. In fact, the 20-point peace plan.
This guy's got one of the most unlikable looking face ever. Oy vey.
Requires Hamas to disarm. The problem is not Israel. The problem, as always, is Hamas. Mohammed Nazal just 4 days ago said that Hamas will not disarm. They said they will continue to maintain control over Gaza security. He said the ceasefire is only a temporary hudna, a pause to rebuild, strength to regain some breathing room. The people of Gaza clearly don't want Hamas in power, which is why Hamas is trying to kill any innocent man, woman, and child that allies themselves against Hamas in Gaza. Oddly enough, you don't hear any of the campus activists or the cultural elites who've been calling Israel's actions a genocide, who've been calling for the freeing of Palestine, who've actually been upset with Hamas killing innocent Gazan civilians. So Hamas must disarm. It's also worth remembering Hamas has been in violation of the ceasefire the minute they signed it by not releasing all of the hostages. Currently, the bodies of 2 Americans, Itai Chen and Omer Nutra, are still being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza, another direct violation of the ceasefire.
Your reaction, Jackson?
I think the world would be a lot safer if we gave Hamas intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear deterrence options. But as for the terms of the ceasefire, I think that
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, Jackson is a communist political commentator. Right, he's right wing. He's MAGA. As self-proclaimed, but I mean, ever since Trump has made it very clear, I mean, like he is in the pocket of the Zionist, he's with the Zionist. You know, it's very clear that yeah, Jackson's pretty much flipped on him like most of everyone. I mean, including me. Like, yeah, I'm not really like I didn't vote for Trump in 2024. I'm not ready. I'll go ahead and reiterate my position. I didn't vote for him 2024. I'm not voting for war with Iran. I didn't vote for any of these new wars. Of course. Now, I'm not anti-war. That does not make me anti-war. But what I am is I want wars that benefit America's interest alone and not benefiting other foreign entities' interest more. So that's why I didn't vote for him in 2024. And quite frankly, I won't vote for anyone until I know they're really going to put America first. But yeah, just to describe Jackson's position, I mean, like he lives in Russia too as well. It's crazy enough. And this guy is he loves these third worldist leaders for sure. Like all these authoritarian monarchs. Yeah, that's Jackson's favorite people. Honestly speaking, I mean, I could appreciate Jackson because he's anti-Zionist a little bit more. But we're gonna see how he does in his debate against Shabbos Kestenbaum, who is a PragerU influencer. If people don't know, Dennis Prager is the founder of PragerU, and as you may could tell, yes, Dennis Prager is a Jew, a Jewish Zionist. He loves bragging about reading the Torah every day. So let's get back on into it.
Hamas should only enforce the ceasefire from their end fully if Israel will actually enforce the ceasefire from their end. And so far, Israel has not done that. Israel agreed to send in 600 trucks of aid and other materials into Gaza each and every day. So far, they're sending in roughly 89 trucks per day into Gaza. We've only seen, I believe, 600 or 900 trucks going to Gaza in total. They've supposed to be sent in 6,600 trucks already by now. When you look at the airstrikes that Israel has committed, I mean, this is an egregious violation of the ceasefire. They've killed roughly 100 Gazans already in just the first 10 days of the ceasefire through airstrikes and shooting. So I think that if Israel or if the United States wants Hamas to disarm, we need to see Israel make good on the promises that they signed their names to.
Shabbos.
Right. So my co-panelist just said that Hamas needs intercontinental ballistic missiles. So it's worth it to point out, and your audience should know, that just last week, Hamas executed 2 kids, Yosef Hassan and Zaid Hassan, along with their mother, Olfat Ajwa, because their father, Hassan Ajwa, joined an anti-Hamas militia group in Gaza. And my co-panelist believes that in response to the cold...
That anti-Hamas group was stealing aid from the Palestinian people and robbing a lot of Palestinians as well during this entire genocide. They were actually propped up and created by Israel. That's what Shabbos is not saying to you.
Blooded murder in the streets of 2 kids, we should actually give the terrorist group that killed those 2 kids intercontinental ballistic missiles. I understand that American political culture is a race to the bottom where we have to appeal to the lowest common denominator because that's what generates clicks and income and Twitter streams. But we're not dealing with an individual who's based in reality. We're dealing with an individual who's currently living in Moscow because he's under American investigation for providing material support to terrorist organizations. So ultimately, if you truly believe in peace for Palestinians, in peace for Israelis, you would ensure, like the majority of Israelis and the majority of Gazans, that Hamas is obliterated from the face of the earth. And we do not need white Westerners like myself or my co-panelist saying otherwise and actually encouraging.
Boy said he's a white Westerner. That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny that he even said that.
Hamas to continue the resistance, to continue to fail its own people, to wage war that they have no hope of ever winning, to insist that women and children come second and fighters and tunnels comes first. You don't have to take it from me. Ismail Haniyeh and Yabba Sinwar said this repeatedly, that the priority when food does come into Gaza should be given first to the fighters, and only if there's actually to give it to civilians. So I'm of the opinion we should obliterate those individuals. For whatever reason, my co-panelist suggests not only should it be, but we should actually arm them.
Back to you, Jackson.
Well, for such a litigious debate opponent here, I find it amusing that he would falsely accuse me of being investigated by federal authorities in the U.S. for anything, because that's just not true. I mean, I'm debating a guy whose claim to fame is suing Harvard University over anti-Semitism. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. But as for the individuals that Hamas is killing inside of Gaza...
Yeah, people don't realize that that's how Shabbos Kestenbaum pretty much blew up, is because he was that Harvard student that was apparently harassed by a bunch of pro-Palestinian activists during the protest against the war. So that's his claim to fame. He was at the RNC, I believe, last year. Shabbos came out there. Bruh. Disappointed as fuck right now. That's all I'm gonna say.
Even Donald Trump has admitted that these are ISIS gangs inside of Gaza. What Donald Trump didn't admit is that they are funded and armed by Israel. So I don't know. I think if we had ISIS gangs rolling around America, they wouldn't be treated so well, especially if they were committing treasonous acts all across America and launching terror attacks all across America. So I think that Hamas is actually following in the American spirit by being opposed to ISIS. And, well, maybe they're actually enforcing the law and upholding law more firmly and fairly against terrorists than we do in the United States. In the United States, we welcome terrorists into the White House like Benjamin Netanyahu. At least Hamas has the ability to enforce the law.
Moving on to the next question, Jackson. If Hamas, if it does disarm...
Can I just ask a very simple question to Jackson? He was saying that these gangs, he was just saying that these gangs are ISIS-affiliated gangs. So Yosef Hassan, I believe, was 13 and Zaid Hassan was 11. Can you please clearly articulate how that 13-year-old boy and 11-year-old boy were affiliated with ISIS?
Yeah, they probably had them as child soldiers. ISIS has been known to have child soldiers in Syria and Iraq, so I wouldn't be surprised that they're conscripted to commit terror attacks by their father. I don't have the exact details, but that's a sincere possibility. I think that it's very interesting that you are sitting here defending these ISIS gangs that President Trump has even called out. I don't know why you do that. I don't know why you're trying to paint them as innocent civilians, but I definitely have to question your judgment and the statements that you're making about these children if you're going to defend ISIS.
So when you keep calling them ISIS gangs, can you name 3 of the gangs? What are their names?
I cannot name the gangs, no. Can you name 3 of the Palestinian resistance organizations?
Easily, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Lions Front, Al-Nusra.
Bruh. Jackson, what the fuck, man? He should have known how to. Bruh, what the hell, man? Why the fuck did he not know the names of the fucking gangs? Bruh. That's just embarrassing. Come on, man. You letting Shabbos Kestenbaum get one up on you on that one.
Hamas, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Again, I understand that you generate income by just saying dumb shit constantly, but ultimately you don't know what you're talking about.
You deny that President Trump said they're ISIS gangs? You deny that President Trump said that they're ISIS gangs?
First of all, can you just respond to what I just said?
Well, you said, can you name 3 of the ISIS gangs? I'm asking you, do you deny that Trump said that these are ISIS gangs and Hamas basically has the right? They're not violating the ceasefire by dealing with them in this extrajudicial manner.
If the hill you want to die on is that a 13-year-old and 11-year-old boy should be publicly executed in cold blood by Hamas, if that's something you want to justify, then go for it. But ultimately, unfortunately, Hamas.
If you want to die on the hill that you want to defend ISIS gangs, that's completely fine by me. I just question your judgment. Also, I mean, let's talk about judgment. You're a lifelong Democrat. Now you're saying that Trump is lying about ISIS gangs in Gaza. Frankly, I don't really think anyone should believe what you have to say.
Fine, so no one has to believe me. You're right, Jackson, but you keep calling them ISIS gangs. So given your expertise in the field of
President
Gaza
Trump
and
called them ISIS gangs.
Jihad, you're right. President Trump said it. So given your expertise in this area, can you name 3 of the clans in Gaza? Just 3. There are dozens, but name 3.
I trust the intelligence of the White House. I trust the intelligence of the Trump administration when it comes to this issue. I agree they are ISIS gangs.
So for your listeners, Jackson is unable to do it because when he's not in front of a Twitter account, he's unable.
I know you don't trust the White House, but I trust the Trump administration.
Hang on. You know, it's interesting you say that you trust the Trump administration because anyone can go on your Twitter account where you explicitly state that you stand with Kim Jong-un, you stand with the Ayatollah who actually tried assassinating President Trump. You are emphatic that you're a communist. So I voted for President Trump. I campaigned for President Trump. I've spoke at the Republican convention. I spoke at Trump rallies. I registered voters. You're living in Moscow as a self-described communist. That's
another key point. This guy is he is a Democrat. He's a lifelong Democrat. Now he switched up. It's like Bill Ackman all over again. Like these guys really exposed themselves when they realized when Trump was running for presidency, and then he ran on pro-Israel rhetoric all the entire campaign. And then like some of these guys that were like lifelong Democratic Jews, they decided to switch up and become Trump supporters and become part of the MAGA movement. Not per se the Republican Party, but more of like the MAGA movement.
Prop up dictators who hate America. You have not found a Middle Eastern terrorist who there's a reason you're living in Moscow. It's because no one in America wants you. So go back to Twitter. You're not an expert. You don't know what you're referring to. You can't name not even one gang in Hamas because all you believe in is anti-West.
But technically, Shabbos Kestenbaum is not one either. But I mean, hey, but at least he actually knows the names. I will give him that.
Anti-American and obviously anti-Semitic narratives, and that's what makes your income. Which again, go for it, but don't try to pretend that you're some geopolitical expert when you know nothing about the Middle East. I believe in freedom and democracy for all peoples in the Middle East. For whatever reason, you decided to align yourself with radical Islamic jihadists who kill 13.
Yeah, he believes in that now after the genocide already took place, and then now we have a ceasefire agreement. He believes that now.
An 11-year-old boy.
Okay, Shabbos, I want Jackson to respond, and then I'm going to move on to the next section. A quick response.
I mean, it's hilarious hearing this come out of your mouth because you're the one that lied, stating that there was a higher proportion of children killed in the Syrian war, in the Vietnam War, and in the Korean War than there was in Gaza. But you've been corrected on that. I think you now understand that's not true. Hopefully, Katie Halper corrected you on that. But the truth of the matter is, you're not American. You're a first-generation American. You've never denied that you have dual citizenship. I don't know if you do. Maybe you don't.
I'm not a dual citizen.
On getting it, but the overwhelming majority. I didn't interrupt you. The overwhelming majority of the American public does not support what Israel's doing. It does not support continuing to fund Israel. It does not support the fact that Israel employed Jeffrey Epstein to get politicians into blackmail rings with child sex traffickers to control our politicians. The overwhelming majority of Americans reject what you are, what you embody. And at the end of the day, you're really not American, maybe by passport, but not in spirit.
Sure.
Moving on to the next question now, gentlemen, please.
Let me respond, then we'll move on. I won't be taking civic lessons from someone who's currently living in Russia. So first of all, you say I'm a dual citizen. If you can prove that I'm a dual citizen, I will give you $500,000.
I did not say you're a dual citizen. When did I say you're a dual citizen? I said I don't know if you're a dual citizen. You've never denied that you're a dual citizen. You studied for 2 years in Jerusalem.
And you never denied
on 3 different trips to.
Bruh. God, this debate's all over the fucking place right now.
Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Who paid for those trips to Israel, by the way? Because you were meeting with government officials, you spoke in the Knesset, you met with the foreign ministry. I find it very interesting how many times you're going to Israel and you're specifically going there to try and convince American youth to be pro-Israel. You're pushing this propaganda on the American public, the American youth. But again, they're rejecting it because it's not in the American DNA.
Sure. So first of all, my meeting with the foreign minister of Israel was actually in New York. And if you want to talk about meeting with foreign dictators or individuals who hold anti-American hostilities, can you please articulate why it is you went to Iraq to meet with the Saeed al-Shuhadi Brigade, which is an internationally designated terrorist group? So that's number one. Number two, I'm not a dual citizen. If you
I'll
can prove
explain.
that I'm
I'll
a citizen
explain
of
that
any other
first.
country, but you'll do it when I'm done talking. If you can prove that I'm a dual citizen of any country, I will give you $500,000. And if you can't prove it, then you give me $10,000 and I'll donate it to a charity of your choice. I can also say dumb shit. Can you prove that you're not under investigation, although you actually are, which again is why you're living in Moscow? And when it comes to
These Jews just love throwing in that personal attack stuff. Honestly speaking, bro. Shabbos is up here casting stones right now at Jackson. Jackson is casting stones right back at him, but like, damn. I don't know. I mean, trust me. Majority of these guys have dual citizenships. Now, as far as Shabbos Kestenbaum, I don't think he's ever publicly been stated that he has, but I mean, he did go there, tripped on Israel, and obviously speaking, I don't believe he even paid for a second of that trip. He didn't pay for that trip. Come on, man.
Civilian death tolls. It's actually interesting because the Gaza-Israeli war has the lowest combatant to civilian death ratio of any modern war fought in modern warfare. And not only that, it actually has the lowest casualty count of any war fought in modern warfare. And you mentioned Korea, for example. Do you know how many civilians were killed in the Korean War?
Well, the numbers fluctuate greatly depending on who you ask.
I'm asking you, how many?
I'm not a historian on the matter. I mean, the numbers fluctuate greatly. Even when you look at the question of child deaths, child casualties in the Korean War, there are debates about whether or not, they're including the numbers of child soldiers, for example. So there's a lot of discrepancies over that. There's really no clear answer.
If Hamas disarms, can we trust Israel won't resume strikes or even the annexation of Gaza? The far-right minister, Ben Gvir, is already calling for renewed attacks now that the living hostages are back in Israel.
Well, they're already striking Gaza this week. I mean, they started to launch these airstrikes on Rafah. Everyone saw the footage. Everyone saw the photos. It's really horrifying. They've killed 100 Gazans since the ceasefire began. And why did they launch these strikes on Rafah? Was it because Hamas or any of the other Palestinian resistance factions violated the ceasefire? The answer is no. The answer, and this is confirmed by the White House and by the Pentagon, the answer is that some stupid Israeli soldier or some Israeli settler company was using a bulldozer rather, near the Rafah border, and they happened to drive that bulldozer over an unexploded ordnance or an IED, something of that kind, and it blew up and they killed them. And then immediately Netanyahu went out and blamed Hamas. So if they're going to accidentally kill themselves and then blame Hamas and commit to airstriking Gaza, I don't think that the ceasefire is worth the paper that it's printed on.
Your response, Shabbos?
Yeah, it's interesting that Jackson says that. I'm wondering if he can respond. Hopefully the camera will be able to see this. This is in the Beit Lehi region above the yellow line, which is the demarcation line in Gaza. These are Hamas terrorists who have infiltrated past the yellow line, who then fired upon 2 IDF soldiers. This is 6 days ago. So I don't know where this tractor story came about, but can you please clearly articulate?
Bro, literally pulled that from the Israel Defense Forces X account, the IDF's X account. Bro, really pulled it from the IDF account and really using that as his strongest argument right there. If Jackson knows how to respond back to that, he would know how to easily beat this argumentation, because he's literally using Israeli sources to try to win this argument. Now, of course, when you're anti-Israel, you're able to use Israeli sources against them, but in this case, he's bringing up Israeli sources right now against Jackson. But let's see how Jackson responds.
And explain why it is you have Hamas fighters with guns in hand who pass the yellow demarcation line. Go ahead.
No, you're so right, Shabbos, Kestenbaum. That definitely shows exactly what you're saying. Just like the satellite photos showed that there were WMD in Iraq before we launched an illegal war and killed 1 million civilians there. Satellite photos, random videos on Twitter, they never lie. The White House and the Pentagon, they probably got it wrong. It probably, despite the fact that if Hamas fighters were there near that Rafah airport, they would have been actually behind Israeli military lines, and they would have had to have, I guess, hunkered out there in that position behind Israeli enemy lines for 8 months with presumably little to no food, water, provisions, anything like that, and then launched a surprise attack, ambush attack on Israeli positions just 2 days after, or a few days after the ceasefire was signed. This happened on Sunday. So no, sorry, I'm not going to take your random 480p video quality Twitter video into account when we have official confirmation from sources in the White House and in the Pentagon.
And just to add some extra context, I'm just going to add, please, I'm just going to add a small bit of extra context. The video that you just shared was from the official IDF account. I just wanted to put that in there as well.
Not only is it from the official IDF account, but it's interesting because Jackson was saying just a few moments earlier that Jackson trusts President Trump, and President Trump actually tweeted that specific video. So Jackson, if you can explain, when should we trust President Trump and when should we not trust President Trump? And again, given that you're an expert in the region, you mentioned the Rafah airport. I have no idea what you're referring to, given that Gaza has not had an airport in 20 years because it kept being used as a base for launching missiles. So again, if you can please clearly articulate, Jackson, when should we be trusting President Trump when he has said and articulated clearly that Hamas has been firing on IDF positions in violation of the ceasefire, and when shouldn't we trust President Trump? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the genius clarification. The Rafah airport has not been operational, and you can barely call it an airport, I guess, because of how long it's been non-operational, but that is where the Rafah airport used to be. So that is called the Rafah airport grounds. As for when we should or should not trust U.S. officials when they speak on sensitive matters related to, hot button geopolitical issues, I think a good rule of thumb is to identify when U.S. officials speak out against the prevailing norms in Washington, D.C. So the prevailing norm would be that the U.S. usually goes along with whatever Israel says. They usually don't have much, to say that's all that different from the Israeli foreign ministry, from the IDF, from Netanyahu himself. So when an American official or Trump himself or a Pentagon official comes out and contradicts an Israeli official, that's extremely rare. And I think that's worth noting. And maybe we should take a closer look at what they're saying because it's probably truthful.
Interesting. So we should only be trusting the president when he affirms your preconceived political notions. And again, given that this is not a random Twitter video, but this is actually a surveillance footage that President Trump himself retweeted of Hamas crossing out into the yellow demarcation line, can you please clearly articulate, A, why Hamas was doing that, and B, how that is not considered a violation of the ceasefire?
So how many days old was this video?
This is from October 19th, so not even 4 days ago.
Okay, so the attack occurred on October 19th, but it took several days for the United States, the Pentagon and the White House to come out to journalists and confirm that what happened was a bulldozer going over either an unexploded ordnance or an IED, again, near the Rafah border. So the video was out, but then they got the facts together and they realized that actually it wasn't Hamas. That's what you want me to try and pick apart here because it seems quite linear and there's a chronological order as to the events of this story, which prove that there is absolutely nothing to do with the random black dots which you're passing off as Hamas militants in that video and what actually occurred to the individual.
Yeah, Jackson's not doing a good job so far. I'm not kind of embarrassed.
That were killed on that day on October 19th.
I'd like to move on to our next section. I want to focus on what happens once the fighting ends and reconstruction begins. There has been many ideas floating around. One has proven very controversial. The former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, overseeing reconstruction and the political transition, the Shabbos, is his involvement welcome?
Look, it really depends on whether the Palestinians and the Israelis have trust in Tony Blair. I mean, certainly the people of the UK don't have trust in Tony Blair. What I would say is this. Unfortunately, Palestinians, like all human beings on planet Earth, possess moral agency, right? They can make choices in life. And all too many of them made the choice in 2006 to elect Hamas. I wish that wasn't true. It is true. Unfortunately, not a single Palestinian, even in the face of the $5 million reward from the Israeli government, decided to reveal where a single hostage was being held. I know Jackson was speaking to a Hamas commander where he told him that actually hostage taking has been vindicated. So he actually believes that more Jewish babies like Fir Bibas and Ariel Bibas should be kidnapped into Gaza and held as hostage. But nevertheless, unfortunately, Israel's main priority is the safety and security of its own people, the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews that call Israel home. So if they have trust in Tony Blair, if they have trust in this intergovernmental coordination for the Gaza Strip, then so be it. But ultimately, we have to ensure that an event like October 7th can never happen again. We have to ensure that Hamas or any radical Islamic jihadist cult does not have the military capabilities or physical infrastructure to wage war against Israel or to harm their own population, which for whatever reason Jackson isn't supportive. But what I will say is it's very hard to get to point 18, 19, 20, and so on if we haven't even crossed point 1 of the 20-point peace plan, which would be the return of all hostages. And I'll remind you, which is what I said in the beginning, if Jackson is so America first, then I'm curious as to why he's not upset that the two bodies of Americans, Omer Nutra and Itai Khan, are still being held hostage by Hamas. Or why is it that Bipin Joshi, who's not Israeli, who's not Jewish, who's a Nepali citizen, he was kidnapped on October 7th. His body was held for more than 2 years. He was murdered in captivity. He was just released. The funeral was in Nepal yesterday. So I'm curious as to why Hamas took bodies. If this is just about the occupation, it's just about the settlements, it's just about Israel, it's just about the Jews. I'm curious why they beheaded Tanzanian workers with shovels. You can watch the video.
Let's allow Jackson to respond.
I'm curious why they kidnapped Nepali citizens. Sure.
How do you respond, Jackson?
I haven't heard that much Zionist cope in the Big 25 in a while. We're still talking about October 7th, I guess. Now, if we're going to talk about making sure another October 7th doesn't happen, I think we should make sure that there's no stand-down orders for the IDF, Israeli security personnel, if there's ever a future attack on Israel. If we want to make sure there's not another October 7th, we should make sure that Israeli Apache attack helicopters don't rain hellfire down upon Israeli civilians and Israeli cars. But I guess we'll leave that to the side for now because that subject has been, I think, touched extensively. As for the issue of Tony Blair, I guess I agree with Shabbos that Tony Blair governing over Gaza is ridiculous. This is a historic mistake. Tony Blair is so unpopular, so hated by the British people, he can't even walk on the streets of London. He illegally started a war in Iraq that was responsible for 1 million deaths. And in this Tony Blair, transitional government plan that they've created, they're talking about creating a blockchain hub in Gaza. They're talking about creating a man-made archipelago of islands off the coast of Gaza. They're talking about making it some tax haven. There's maybe a very small chance that's what the Palestinian people want for the future of their country, but I'm not a betting man. My religion doesn't allow for that. But if I was, I would say that's probably not what the Palestinian people want. They don't want to be represented by Tony Blair, and I think this is just yet another absolutely disgraceful chapter in the troubled history of the people of Gaza.
Shabbos.
Well, again, it's interesting that Jackson will say that the Palestinians probably don't want Tony Blair governing them, and he's right, but the majority of the Palestinian people don't want Hamas governing them. So again, I'm curious, Jackson, why is it that we should listen to the Palestinian people that Tony Blair should not be running Gaza when the Palestinians say we don't want to be killed in cold blood by the dictatorial, tyrannical Islamic regime of Hamas? Then your response is, well, actually, we should be giving Hamas intercontinental ballistic missiles.
Because I think it'd be super based if Hamas had intercontinental ballistic missiles. But as to whether or not Hamas should be governing Gaza, I mean, that's a question for the Palestinians. In the Beijing declaration, the 14-point Beijing declaration with the 14 factions of the Palestinian resistance and different political organizations within Palestine, Hamas actually agreed in Beijing with the Chinese authorities that they would not be a part of the transitional government. So I don't know why you're making an issue out of this, trying to act like Hamas wants to control Gaza tomorrow or something, but they said that they would not be a part of the transitional government. I interviewed one of the Hamas Politburo members. I went to Doha, Qatar, and I asked him that very question. I said, are you going to be a part of the transitional government? He said, no, we don't have any intent to be a part of it. So I think you're making an issue out of a non-issue.
So I would say two things very quickly. You accused me, or at least you insinuated, that I'm paid for by the Israeli government because I made numerous trips to Israel, leaving aside the fact that my family lives in Israel. So of course I was visiting my grandparents. It's interesting because, as you just admitted, you went to Doha to interview Hamas.
You're meeting with government officials.
For the funeral of Hassan Nasrallah. You went to Iraq. You went to Iraq to interview the leader of an internationally designated terrorist group. So I'd be curious to actually understand who paid for those trips to all of these terrorist hotspots. That's number one. Number two is when I said, why should Hamas have intercontinental ballistic missiles? You said it would be based, which I think really underscores the dumbing down of our society. When you have an individual who's propped up by Qatari bots on Twitter, who makes his entire income after saying outrageous and dumb things for the sheer purpose of saying outrageous and dumb things.
There goes that Hasbara talking points about the propped up by Qatari bots or whatever, man. They love saying that crap, bro, that you're paid by Qatar. Like, bro, these people really believe Qatar is controlling our government, our politics, our media. They really believe that. Like, bro. This is when the Hasbara starts coming out right now, and you're starting to see it in full swing.
I gotta say, shame on Al Arabiya, who platforms the lowest common denominator of our society. This is an individual who has the intellectual capabilities of a folding chair. The people of Gaza do not want Hamas, but Jackson Hinkle, who's currently living in Moscow, who has interviewed and expressed sympathies and support for every terrorist in the Middle East you can think of, he knows better than the people of Gaza. It's pretty shameful.
Your response, Jackson, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
He's still trying to claim that I said that Hamas is going to govern Gaza and this transitional government, that Hamas wants that. That's just not true. He can't even read a one-page document, the Beijing Declaration, apparently, but he's talking about me having a low IQ. Very interesting. As for why I earnestly believe that Hamas should have ICBMs, it's because it is, as we see in Iran, as we see in North Korea, as we see in China, Russia, you name it, missiles of this kind are a very good deterrent against any sort of foreign threats. And I support the sovereignty of the people of Palestine because they are humans. They have basic rights. And I believe that they should be able to have the ability to determine their own destiny, but they cannot do that. They can't even choose to have their own government if they're being invaded, occupied, and having Tony Blair thrust upon them by the Brits, the UK, and the...
You should go as far as to bring up the fact that the IDF was built on terrorism. Literally, it's built on the back of terrorism. That would make his argument way stronger.
United States and Israel. So again, that's why I think they should have it.
Sorry, go ahead. I just want to say,
you brought up the
point of, you keep saying that
you brought up the point of me going to Iraq, and you brought up the point of me going to Iraq and to Lebanon, I believe. I'd also add that I took an amazing trip to Yemen, and I met with the leadership of Ansar Allah in Yemen. That was amazing. As you pointed out earlier on, you said I'm big money bags because I've got 3.6 million followers on Twitter. That is true. I have the capacity to pay for my own airfare. I get Turkish Airlines miles and miles points, so some of these trips, are based on points, which is pretty great. But I enjoy all these trips. I enjoy meeting these people, and I enjoy sharing their cultures and their political aspirations with the rest of the world.
So again,
from my perspective, gentlemen, I'd just like to say as well.
Let me say one thing. When Jackson talks about the political aspirations of the Houthis in Yemen, which again is an internationally designated terrorist group, the actual slogan for the Houthis is death to America. So
by the definition of terrorism, then the IDF would fall into that same category, Shabbos. I mean, that Jackson should say this type of stuff to make his arguments way stronger.
It's interesting that Jackson can say that he's America first and he trusts President Trump when the reason he's living in Moscow is because he was about to be under federal investigation for providing material support to actual terrorists who not only tried assassinating President Trump, like the Ayatollah in Iran, also the Houthis, who again, if you can clearly articulate to me, Jackson, why is it that you express support for the Ayatollah who tried assassinating President Trump, and why is it that you express support for the Houthis, whose slogan is literally death to America? And when you talk about that you believe that the Palestinians have human...
Look, bro, Shav's got to give that up. They can say death to America all they want. Militarily, can they really stand up to America? No. Like these Hezbollah talking points are literally just so outdated and so plain out. Come on, man. They can't militarily stand up to us.
rights, just like any other people. I would agree with you, which is why I find it very odd that when I bring up Yosef Hassan and Zid Hassan, a 13-year-old boy and an 11-year-old boy who were killed just last week by Hamas because their father was involved in anti-Hamas activities, you actually don't see a problem with that.
You're repeating yourself. You're repeating yourself.
Because you don't have the intellectual ability to respond or refute to my claims.
Respond, Jackson.
I literally have respond. You're sewing out and repeating yourself now. So as for the question of, you said a lot there. As for the question of Yemen, you say their slogan is death to America. I mean, that's one part of their slogan. Yes, I went there. I'm an American. I only hold one citizenship, and they treated me quite well when I was there. I enjoyed my time there. So clearly it's not like death to American citizens. I think they mean death to American imperialism. And when I say I think, I mean, I know because they told me that. As for what was something that you're talking about, the Americans that were fighting for Israel and their bodies being left behind in Gaza or something? Frankly, if there's any American who has been fighting for Israel in IDF, I think they should immediately lose their citizenship, and I think they should be brought to the United States for war criminal charges, and I think they should be locked in a very tiny prison cell for the rest of their life. Was there anything else I missed there that you wanted me to address?
Yeah. He should have articulated that better. We should not be fighting for any foreign entity at all. We should not. None of our no American citizens should be fighting for another military at that point. At that point, they should be tried for treason or not allowed to come back to the United States or not hold a position of government at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Evidently, you don't have the ability to comprehend more than 2 talking points. But again, if we could just go back to Yosef Hassan and Zid Hassan, the 13-year-old boy and 11-year-old boy, I'm curious how you can compartmentalize the fact that Palestinians have human rights and are human beings. Just
the
like
child soldiers, yes. The ISIS child. Okay,
right.
Now we're going back to defending ISIS.
If you can please,
this was literally the first topic that we discussed. But you keep repeating it because for some reason you really wanted to defend ISIS, even though Trump said they're ISIS gangs. You want to continue to defend ISIS.
Because
very weird.
Again, this is what happens.
Very weird. Shabbos Kestenbaum stands with ISIS.
Yeah. This is what happens when you don't have your Qatari talking points.
Yeah, you do. Shabbos Kestenbaum stands with ISIS. That's crazy. You call yourself an American. That's insane. No wonder you're a lifelong Democrat. No wonder you voted for Hillary Clinton, or you supported Hillary Clinton. You supported Barack Obama. Not surprising that you also support ISIS, just like Obama did in Syria, by the way.
I'd like to move on to our next and final section.
You have to let me respond to his idiocy. It's interesting you talk about me supporting Hillary Clinton, which I didn't. I was actually a Bernie Sanders supporter, which is interesting because so were you. And I know you don't like when people.
They're both L's on that. Supporting Bernie Sanders. Imagine supporting a guy who has never been able to make it past to make it as far as to run for president. He cast his bid, but he's never made it farther than the presidential debate. That's the farthest he's ever gone. Literally, this guy, Bernie Sanders, is bitter about never being able to make it towards running for president, or even, dare I say, never even made it to vice president. He never made it to any type of the highest degree in political power, which is president or vice president. And these guys supported him. Bernie be lucky he'll be alive in the next 4 years, honestly speaking, to see the next president of the United States.
Remind you of that fact because it makes you look like an idiot. I'm at least able to admit that I was 18 and I was naive, and then I had a functioning brain and was able to actually see that terrorist groups like the Houthis that call death to America, which you yourself have admitted is part of their slogan, is pretty bad. And again, it's interesting you talk about the need to strip Americans of their citizenship. I live in America. I voted for President Trump. I campaigned for President Trump. You currently live in Russia. Okay, so you don't have the ability to start questioning people's patriotism. Why don't you come back to the United States and stand trial for all the federal investigations for providing material support to terrorist organizations? And again, if you can please provide 2 pieces of evidence as to how Zid Hassan, a 13-year-old boy, was part of ISIS, which doesn't even operate in Gaza, that would be great. If you're able to provide the list of civilian casualties in the Korean War, that would be great. If you are able to provide the combatant to civilian ratio in the Gaza-Israeli war, that would be great. If you're able to provide the names of free clans that are currently operating in Gaza, that would be great. But you can't. Why? Because again, you have the intellectual capability of a folding chair. You are not able to respond to arguments. You're not a debater. You're a hack who says dumb shit on Twitter for money. So enjoy Russia. I will continue to enjoy my life in the greatest country of all, the United States of America, and any terrorist group that you simp to, whether it's the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, I will loudly stand against. And I speak on behalf of millions of Americans when I say, take your communist Russian Houthi ass and stay in Moscow.
Whoa. That guy just went like, he went like full John McCain reincarnate on me. We're talking about moving to the next question. Wow. Okay. I'll just say,
a quick response.
I'll say one thing. I find it so interesting that I have not been made aware of this quote unquote federal investigation into me for allegedly visiting countries or communicating with certain political leaders. I don't know. I guess interviewing leaders is now illegal. But Shabbos Kestenbaum apparently has, the insider knowledge. Shabbos, do you have some special relationship with the FBI or the CIA or NSA that you want to inform the public about at this time? Because you keep saying this is happening.
Easily.
So how do you know exactly?
Yes. Oh, easily, because unlike you, I'm able to comprehend American law. It's illegal to provide material support to a terrorist organization. It violates USC Code 113.
Yeah, but there's no nowhere anywhere where they say they're investigating Jackson Hinkle. If there is, then trust me, they would have gotten out there by now. But I mean, like, yeah, he's just going off the definition of USC code. He's about to bring it up. I forgot off the top of my head, but I mean, it's possibility that Jackson probably will be stopped at the airport and probably frisked if he ever does come back to America, and possibly detained in some ways. So yeah, there's no official concrete that Jackson's on the investigation, but I mean, they wouldn't be surprised that later on he probably will be.
I believe you have been on the record for your support of the Houthis.
You're just making stuff up. So you're saying that it's illegal to interview world leaders, but CNN and Vice News can go interview Al Qaeda and ISIS and Hayat al-Sham in Syria. So that's fine. But if I interview legitimate governments and their presidents or their foreign ministers, and that's illegal?
No, it would be illegal to provide material support, which is what you've done. It's also illegal to physically abuse your wife, which you have done. Yeah, and there's a reason that you're living in Moscow. It's because you
don't even have a wife. This guy is so insane.
You got divorced because you kept abusing her. Because you got divorced because you abused her.
He made his entire political legacy. Look, the most surprising thing about this whole interview is that there's actually a person named Shabbos Kestenbaum, and your entire claim to fame is that you literally sued Harvard for anti-Semitism. Bro is never beating the stereotype allegations.
I want to move on to the next section, gentlemen, please. We're just running out of time. We're just running out of time. Okay. A very quick response.
First of all, my name is Shabbos Kestenbaum. We're not going to pronounce it. Second of all, yeah, we sued Harvard, and we got a federal district court, Judge Richard Stearns, to actually agree that our claims had validity, and we won. So if any American is watching this, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, if your civil rights are being denied to you, then you should absolutely take the court of law into your own hands, and that you should ensure that elitist, billionaire institutions like Harvard or Columbia or elsewhere are held accountable. That's number one. Number two, Jackson, you're right. You don't have a wife. That's because she divorced you because you physically abused her. Everyone can...
Yeah, these guys are going... He's going for his neck right now. He's going personal attack. He's going personal attack right now. Man... Shabbos trying to go for his neck right now. Holy shit.
Google Jackson Hinkle wife. Everyone can also Google...
I've never had a wife. I don't know why he... And I don't know as well legally if those are allegations as well. Listen. If your I guess your line for success and truth is based on whether or not you get a successful court hearing in an appeal or something like that, by your own logic, that would mean that Jeffrey Epstein was vindicated of his crimes that he committed on behalf of Mossad because he got a plea deal in Florida after sex trafficking a bunch of little girls. So no, the law is not always fair and correct, and the Trump administration and their Zionist pawns had a big influence on that settlement that you're discussing.
Really? So can you please clearly articulate how the Trump administration resulted in the settlement between me and Harvard University? Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Trump administration was threatening to withhold in the long term $9 billion in federal funding for Harvard over anti-Semitism.
You are wrong because our court case was decided well before that. So go ahead, try again.
So you think that the Trump administration just announced that on day one, or do you think that there was probably private negotiations going on behind the scenes, as there always are in matters like this? You weren't the only lawsuit. There was a number of lawsuits, which were even settled before yours, if I'm not mistaken.
These are not strong arguments against Shabbos Kestenbaum. Not strong arguments. Jackson could have done a better job than this, but I see why he doesn't debate a lot of times.
This was a months-long negotiation that was started by the Trump administration before he even entered office. So I don't really...
I have to interject here, gentlemen. It's getting extremely personal. I want to drag us back to the debate, which is why I brought you both here. The Gaza war has shifted political discourse globally, especially in the West. In Washington, backlash against Israeli lobby group AIPAC is growing. The Democratic Congressman, Seth Moulton, has just returned AIPAC's donations. I'd like to come to you, Jackson. Why is this happening, and is this the new normal?
This is happening because Seth Moulton realizes that it is unpopular to take money from AIPAC. Unfortunately, for many American citizens, they're going to be duped into believing that any politician who does this is, in effect, not taking money from pro-Israel lobby groups in the United States. There are many pro-Israel lobby groups. There's federal ones. There's state ones. So I don't really know if denying AIPAC donations means a whole lot. We'll have to wait and see. I think it's worth noting that pro-Israel lobby groups donate more money to politicians and political campaigns and political causes than any other country on the face of the planet, who, by the way, every other country on the face of the planet has to register as a foreign agent under FARA if they are going to intervene in U.S. politics in this manner. For some reason, Israel doesn't have to do that. I know JFK tried to change that when he was president, then he was killed. And not too long after he was killed, the Department of Justice from the Johnson administration revoked that request that was going through to make AIPAC's predecessor register as a foreign agent.
How do your assumptions,
Sure,
Shabbos?
Yeah, I'd say two things. First of all, the Federal District Court in Massachusetts and our judge, Richard Stearns, he actually ruled that our case could go to trial in July of 2024 when Joe Biden was still in office. So again, this is the problem with low IQ individuals like Jackson Hinkle. They say stuff when you ask them basic questions, they're unable to respond. So for example, you just said that AIPAC is the largest provider of lobbying funds. Do you know how much money they gave last year? Take a guess. Do you know?
I didn't say that AIPAC was. I said pro-Israel lobby organizations are the #1 foreign influence in U.S. politics compared to any other country that intervenes in U.S. politics and has to also register under FARA.
Okay, so let me ask you a basic follow-up question. Can you name 3 pro-Israel foreign lobbying groups and how much money they've spent, given you just made the claim?
How much money they've spent?
I don't
track. I'm not on open. I'm not on open secrets 24 hours a day reading all of the new FEC filing reports of these different Jewish organizations. I'm not that crazy. You have AIPAC, you have J Street in California, you have the California Jewish League, I believe, which just got a bill passed in the California state legislature. I believe Gavin Newsom hasn't signed it yet, but they're creating some anti-Semitism czar to oversee anti-Semitism in all California public schools. But no, sorry, I cannot give you their exact expenditure amounts to the date. Sorry.
So then it's interesting. So then it's really interesting, though, that you would say that they have spent more than every other foreign lobbying group when you can't even name the amount that they have spent. And also, you specifically said foreign lobbying. Last I checked, California's in the United States.
It's a well-known fact.
It's
a well-known fact.
Name 3 foreign lobbying groups.
Spend more than anyone else. Literally, Miriam Adelson spent like $100 or $200 million on the Trump campaign in 2024. She was, I think, the second biggest spender in the entire election cycle, and she put it all to Trump. So it's very clear that pro-Israel lobby groups, pro-Israel, also individuals, if you include Miriam Adelson, which I initially was not including Miriam Adelson, they are the biggest spenders.
Sure. So again, you just made the claim that foreign pro-Israel lobbying groups have outspent every other foreign lobbying group. I'm asking you 2 basic questions. As someone who calls himself a journalist, you should be able to answer. Can you name A, the amount of money they've spent, or B, can you name 3 foreign lobbying pro-Israel groups? Miriam Adelson is a person and she's an American. The California Jewish lobbying group is based in California. So can you please name 3 pro-Israel foreign lobbying?
That's a U.S. state. What does that have to do with anything? And also, by the way, I don't know
because you made the claim.
Understand this, but there are actual campaign contribution limits on how much an individual person can donate to any given politician. So Miriam Adelson didn't actually contribute directly to the Trump administration. In some ways she did through political action committees, but in other ways, she did it through other means, through dark money channels, things of this nature. But you know what, Shabbos, Kestenbaum, you're right. I believe actually I got it completely wrong here. I think that actually Papua New Guinea or Burkina Faso is probably the #1 foreign country intervening in U.S. politics and donating to politicians. Definitely not Israel. I don't know why I said that. It's probably like Vietnam or something. You're right.
So again, for all of the listeners who've been following the debate, which I can't imagine is too many at this point, every time I've asked Jackson a normal, rational follow-up question to claims he has made. So for example, when he had said that more civilians died in Gaza than Korea, I said, okay, well, how many civilians died in Korea? He's not able
I never said that. I said it's a higher proportion of children. I never said that more civilians died in Gaza than Korea.
Try not to interrupt, buddy.
Never said that. Okay. I don't misinterpret your words. I never said more civilians died in Gaza than in Vietnam or Korea or anything like that. I said there's a higher proportion of child deaths in Gaza than in Korea, than in Syria, or than in Vietnam, which is something you claimed was not true. And then you got corrected live on Piers Morgan, and you were made out to be a clown. Now you're trying to mince my words and make people think that I said something I didn't say.
We're just out of time, gentlemen. I'm going to have to jump in there.
Question. Can you name? Wait, let me ask one last question. Because again, Jackson, you should make another claim. Can you name what the child or civilian combatant ratio?
Bro's trying to be Matan Evans out here. Can you name 5 books to the OnlyFans girl? Trying to be Matan Evans out here. Listen, have a normal debate. Talk about the facts. You know what the facts are. You know Papua New Guinea isn't the #1 foreign donor of U.S. elections. Get real and stop lying about the child deaths in Gaza.
So again, you just made a claim. I just want to understand your claim. You said that the Syrian civilian or child combatant ratio was lower than in Gaza. If I want to believe that claim, can you please tell me what was the civilian or child ratio in the Syrian civil war?
The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says it's 4 to 5%. The United Nations says it's 12%.
Great. You just make shit up. It's unbelievable. So again, for all of your listeners, there's a reason Jackson.
You want to fact check me on that right now? Look it up. Why when I answer your question, is it just not believable now? Because those are 2 real organizations that put out those
making up numbers.
Real statistics. They're not made up numbers. Those are what their reports actually said about the Syrian war.
So
what do you want me to do?
Every single time I've asked Jackson,
you can read the reports.
I've asked Jackson a straightforward question, he can't answer, or he'll just make up numbers. The reality is that the war in Gaza has had the lowest civilian to combatant ratio in the history of modern warfare. That's #1. #2, I'm not a fan of AIPAC. Politicians can take whatever money they want.
He never brought up the fact that there are people that are still missing right now. So we have official numbers from the Israeli sources, but we don't account for the people that are buried underneath rubble that are still, and also people that are still missing. So
Yet when Jackson makes a ludicrous claim that the pro-Israel foreign lobbying groups have spent more than every other country, but then he's not able to name 3 pro-Israel foreign lobbying groups, I'm somewhat suspect to his claims.
We're just out of time. I'm going to have to end it there. So thank you to our panel.
all right, that is the debate. So embarrassing on Jackson Hinkle's part. I'm gonna be real with you, very embarrassing. Shabbos Kestenbaum, he didn't really, well, he asked some good follow-up questions. It's just that Jackson didn't know how to respond to any of the claims that were any of the questions that was being asked. He responded not the way that it should have responded. More, he should have, in my opinion, he should have brushed up on some of the talking points. He should have asked him better and should have responded accordingly. That's how I feel. So, anyways, yeah. So this is gonna be uploaded tonight at 8 p.m. This is Tonight in America show. So I want to thank you guys for enjoying the debate right here. I'm gonna pre-record tonight an official show, and I'm gonna release it tomorrow on Tuesday. But have a good rest of your day, and yeah, I'm out of here.